Hello, my name is Niall Enright. I'd like to welcome you to this introduction to Mac Builder Pro. I've double-clicked on the Mac Builder Pro executable and the application has opened up on the Welcome tab. And as you can see, here on the left-hand side is an introduction as to what a marginal abatement cost curve is. Before I get into details about Mac Builder Pro, let's talk a little bit about what a Mac curve is. A Mac curve is nothing more than an Excel graph. It's an unusual graph though. It looks like a bar chart, but the bars are of variable widths. And in fact, what it's showing on the vertical axis is the net cost saving, or the net cost, of a range of different projects. This Mac chart has 6 projects as it happens. On the left hand side here, project number 1 is the one that saves us the most money, and that money is shown as euros per kilogram of CO2 per year. So each year this project will reduce our operating cost by about 80 euros. Now the horizontal axis shows us the total cumulative amount of CO2 that a given project will save. So although project number 1 is very attractive, actually it's project number 3 that's the one that's having the biggest impact, because it's got the widest horizontal width, if you want. And that's really all a Mac curve is a special form of chart. But because Excel isn't able to create variable width bar charts, we've had to design Mac Builder Pro. So turning to the right hand side, there's a few more things I'd like to tell you about Mac Builder Pro. First of all, throughout the application are a range of buttons. These buttons are very simple. You just press them and they'll take you to the relevant action that you have chosen. And please remember that throughout Mac Builder Pro, cells that are yellow are editable, whereas blue cells are calculated, and so you won't be able to change the contents. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take you to the Configure Mac sheet, which will enable us to look at a Mac chart and change its appearance. Okay, so now we've been moved to the tab marked Mac, and as you can see in the center of this page we have our marginal abatement cost curve, in this case for the Highland plant. You can see we have our chart and some titles, some labels of various different kinds, and what we're going to show you is how through changing some of these cells here in yellow you can actually modify the appearance of this chart. So in very simple terms, for example, I could change the title, so I'll call it Niall's New Mac, and you can see it just updates that automatically, and this is precisely the way that Mac Builder Pro is designed to work. So I could, for example, change the currency as well if I wanted to. Now one of the things as you do going through these elements is you can actually see that there's a input hint that's available to you. Now those input hints are extremely useful when you're first starting to use Mac Builder Pro, but after you've become familiar with the interface they can become a little bit irritating. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to remove them and get rid of them. So you can see now those input hints have disappeared. So here it's telling me that our units of abatement are tons of CO2 on the horizontal axis, and then the vertical axis is euros per ton of CO2 saving or cost related to each one of these 12 different projects that I've got in my Mac. So what sorts of things can we do with these options around here? Well, one of the ones I can do, for example, is to change the rounding of the X value axis numbers, so you can see that those numbers have changed. And I can also change their orientation and even their position, so I can put them below the line if I wanted to, and in that way I can very easily get to a labeling arrangement that suits my needs. So I'll put them back above. I think it looks a bit nicer there, and I'll put that rounding down to the nearest 20 tons of CO2, so it gives a nice even spaced horizontal label there. I can also change the project labels, which are shown here as the numbers 1 to 12, and obviously the corresponding table below. But if I prefer to change that to, for example, a letter, I could do that as well, and you can see now I've gone from A through to L. This part of the Mac, the individual labels, is not refreshed every time unless I press the Rebuild Mac. So if I press that button there, you'll notice now that that's going to come through in a second, and I'll have my letters A to L. Now, perhaps I'm not happy with one of the positions of the individual labels, and what I can do is, in typical Excel fashion, is I can just take that label and I can move it slightly. Okay, so I can pull that letter A out, and I can put that letter B a little bit closer to where the chart bar is, and you can see I can adjust that. So in addition to all of the options that you have in these yellow boxes around a Mac curve, you also have the opportunity to use all of Excel's inbuilt charting functions, so you can change the appearance of the graph directly from the Excel interface, although in many ways using these options around the Mac chart is much more reliable and will allow you to get a more consistent result. One of the things that I often want to show on a Mac chart is the point at which the projects go from being net cost saving to actually starting to have a positive cost, and that's what's called the intercept here. So if I wanted to display that on the graph, I simply choose intercept, and Mac Builder Pro will go off and it will create that intercept for me. And it's at the value of 1,260 tons. So that's how much abatement of CO2 I could achieve while still having positive savings, or negative cost if you will, from that basket of projects. I'm a little concerned about how close that is to my title, so I can actually change the height of that quite easily by just changing the percentage it is of the overall vertical axis. It's quite a nice little feature there. Other aspects of what I can include or not in the Mac curve are, for example, associated with each individual project list. I could include some additional bits of information. So what the capital cost of that project is, for example, what the payback is, or what the net present value is. So let's include net present value, and we'll go ahead and rebuild our Mac, and you can see the net present value has appeared against each one of those projects. So again, a neat feature. You have a choice of up to 4 individual additional elements of information that you can include associated with each individual project in your Mac. You can also introduce other data into your Mac chart. So for example, if I'm interested in what the total CO2 of my entire basket of projects is, I can include that in my graph, the total capital cost for all of them, that intercept number of 1260 I can also include, and how much it costs to get me to that intercept. And again, I have a range of different statistics that I can introduce, and so when I press that Rebuild Mac button, Mac Builder Pro will go off and grab those bits of information and again put them at the bottom of the chart here for me. So very flexible, very adaptable, lots of options I haven't shown you just yet, but as you can see, you can get the flavor of how Mac Builder Pro enables you to produce the output that suits your needs. So the next thing I want to show you is how you can actually enter data for an individual Mac, or for that matter, how you can remove data for a project. So if I go into this Edit Mac Data option here, I'm taken to my data entry screen. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to eliminate one of my projects from my Mac list. So going back to my Mac list, you can see this project C, which is a project with a huge impact. Maybe I don't want to display that on my Mac curve at the moment. Perhaps I'm uncertain about the numbers, perhaps I want to validate that a little bit further. So just simply go into Edit Mac Data. I've got the project details here, and I just simply drop down this box here that says Exclude. It's highlighted in red now. So popping back to the Mac screen, you'll see that that Mac chart will get redrawn in a moment, and you see it's eliminated now, and I only have 11 projects on my list rather than the 12 I had a moment ago. Okay, let's go back into that Edit Mac Data. I'm going to include that project again, so not exclude it, so to speak. But I'm also going to enter another project. So I'm going to call this project, I don't know, Compressed Air Leak Detection. Okay, and let's imagine I'm going to spend $5,000 maybe on a ultrasonic leak detector. It's going to save me $20,000 a year, so it's a great project, so I'm glad to get that in there. And in terms of the amount of CO2 it'll save, let's see, $20,000, 200,000 kilowatt hours, about half a kilo per kilowatt hour, so that's going to be about 100 tons of CO2, and the project lifetime is going to have a 10-year life. That's the life of the handheld compressed air leak detector device that I'm going to use. And in fact, it's just those 5 pieces of information that I need to create a new project on my Mac. It's very, very efficient in terms of the amount of data that you have to provide Mac Builder Pro. There are some additional bits of information though that I could usefully add, and these are called the categories, and I'll show you in a moment how you set categories up. But at the moment you can just see that there's a drop down list of a range of different categories, so I'll choose that compressed air category. Let's see, where is it? Here it is. Okay, the plant is in Europe, so I'll just select Europe from my list. And now I've got a status for my project, which might be whether it's feasible, whether the capital has been requested, or whether it's been approved. So let's just say that this project has been approved. Okay, so popping back to my marginal abatement cost curve, Mac Builder Pro will redraw my chart for me, and you can see I've actually got compressed air leak detection here. Forgive the typo. That's a great project, actually showing a very significant cost saving, although the amount of CO2 reduction is only at 100 tons, isn't as great as say this project D here, now the steam line control line valve. So you can see that Mac Builder Pro will easily add projects to my chart, and in fact in Mac Builder Pro you can have up to 100 projects, at which point they become such small vertical slices that the idea of presenting them in a Mac is probably not sensible anyhow. A few things I'd like to point out of this chart is you can actually see here that I've got the projects categorized as their status of approval. So this one has been signed off, which is my compressed air leak detection. Some of these other projects here are feasible but are awaiting approval, and so forth. So it's this ability to show additional categories on my Mac chart that is one of the strengths of Mac Builder Pro. And if I take you to this option here called Setup Categories, you'll be able to see the sorts of range of things that can be done with categories. So first of all, we had those technology categories which I showed you about a moment ago, and one of the technologies is called Compare. I don't like the way that it's been named here, so I'm just going to rename it as compressed air. So you can see that's a bit better. You can see I've also got other categories like the region that the project's in, or the status of approval, stage of approval I should say, and I can edit any one of these categories. I can add additional elements to those categories. Mac Builder Pro enables me to create my own categories entirely as I wish. So for example, I might, instead of region, actually want to have the, I don't know, the division in the company which the project belongs. I also have a number of other categories are available to me, and these are what we call threshold categories. So here for example I've got a payback, so whether it's an immediate payback, so that means if it's 0 months to achieve savings it'd be called immediate, less than 6 months is fast, less than 24 is good, 36 reasonable, 60 is poor, and so on and so forth. Or my CapEx approval levels, so any projects over $10,000 have to go to the department level. Any projects over $100,000 have to go to the site manager level, and I can set these thresholds to suit my particular requirements. So let's go back to the Mac chart and see what we can do with these categories. Well, the categories are all controlled from the left hand side here. So you see at the moment I have the category of status. Okay, now how about the approval band? So that would be interesting to see, because that first project of mine was a $5,000 project, and you can actually see that it doesn't require approval. It's only $5,000. So now I've got the different levels. These projects here, for example, require approval at department level, but actually this big project here, Project M, would require main board approval. While we're on the subject of this different categorization, you notice that there are different colors associated with each individual category, and these are defined or controlled by the style that you've chosen, and this style is called Blues 12, various muted shade of the color blue. And in fact I can choose different styles to suit. So I've got style 2 for example here, which is a rather brash sort of 1950s palette, or I've got a range of other different styles: green, red, bright, rainbow. How about this rainbow? Let's see what that looks like. And this has another big range of different colors. So here we go. Here we're going from red all the way through to bright green. If I want to change any aspect of these individual styles, I can go into edit the current style, and you can see I have a dialog box here from where I can choose individual colors and so forth. So if I want to choose the color for my first project category and I wanted to make that something much brasher and bolder, let's go for this sort of purple color. I can pick it from that color picker there, and I can go and save, and then if I return to my Mac chart, that will be updated, and let's press that button more definitively, and you notice now that's changed to purple. And through this style you can actually edit all of the font colors, the sizes of the fonts, the precise fonts that you use, and so it'd be very easy to create a corporate style that matches your own businesses or organizations presentation style. And obviously that's quite an important feature, and you can modify your styles entirely to suit you. The important thing about this is that it enables you to recover a complete style collection if you want, and apply that to a particular Mac chart without having to reformat each individual element of your Mac through the Excel interface. So it saves a lot of time and effort. Okay, so let's pop back across to my rather luridly colored Mac chart now and talk a little bit more about some of the other things that we can do with our Mac chart. So one of the things that we can do is we can actually show different kinds of information on our Mac. So a traditional marginal abatement cost curve will actually show you the marginal cost, that is to say the net present value per ton of CO2 or kilogram of CO2 abatement per annum over the lifetime of the project. So that's a traditional marginal abatement cost chart. But there are some other forms of presentation that are available to you here within Mac Builder Pro, which are quite innovative, and I've had cause to use myself in a variety of different circumstances with clients. The first one here is payback. So if I choose payback, what will happen is that Mac Builder Pro will go off and it will rebuild the chart, and it will show me the payback of all of these projects. Now, as you can see, that every project has a positive payback. So now we're looking at these marginal abatement cost curves in quite a different light. The horizontal axis has remained unchanged, and that is to say that the individual projects are still the width of the projects represents the amount of CO2 that they'll abate, but the vertical axis now is how many months it takes for them to pay back. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of that intercept because that's no longer relevant, so I'll just show nothing here, so that number will disappear. Another thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to just put those X values below the chart so that they're actually more visible. You can see them now. I can actually modify the chart size slightly if I wanted to, so I can close that and I can bring that up a little bit here, and that will help me move this label down. So you can see it's very flexible and very adaptable. Now, one of the things that clients often will have is they'll have a threshold for payback. So it might be all projects with a 2-year payback are likely to get approval. So that's really around this 24-month line here. So I can actually show my payback graph in an unusual way. I can actually show my payback as in a variance from a particular number. So I'm going to show this as a variance from 24 months of my individual payback period, and I'm going to take those labels and I'm going to put them, instead of auto outside, I'm going to put them above because it makes it a lot easier for me to actually see the projects. Okay, and then I'm going to take these X values positions and I'm also going to put them above but vertical, and hopefully that will give me a nice neat presentation. Okay, so maybe we'll go back to position auto outside for the labels. Yeah, that's clear. Nice. See how quick and easy it is to actually change the style and presentation. And in fact, I'm going to go back to my favorite blues 12 style, and you can actually see now the color scheme is a bit more pleasant on the eyes. Returning back to the payback, effectively what I've done is I've said that I'm subtracting 24 months from the individual payback. So all of those projects below the 0 line are projects that are effectively fewer months payback than my threshold of 24 months. So you can actually see that effectively projects A through J are the ones that should receive approval under our 2-year payback policy. Very neat way of actually showing MAC data in a way that in some ways more aligned to the way that companies actually approve projects. Okay, so I've adjusted the MAC. You can see that there's lots of flexibility in that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to send that MAC graph to a Word document. So I simply press this copy to Word button here. So I'm going to send that MAC graph to Word. So I simply press this copy to Word button here, and that will actually copy that over to a MAC chart for me. Okay, so I simply press this copy to Word button, and what it does is it actually opens up Microsoft Word for me, and then you can see it introduces it in a Word document. I'm sorry, the screen recording isn't quite capturing that, so let's do that again. Okay, so let's see what we can do with my MAC chart now. So one of the things I want to do is obviously I want to put it in Word, so I'll just press copy to Word, and it will actually, I can copy it directly to Word, or I could copy it to the clipboard, and then I can move over to my Word document. Actually, that's what I need to do. That's what I need to do. Okay. Okay, so let's get rid of the clipboard. Okay, so one of the things I'm going to do with my MAC chart now is to copy it to Word. So I just simply press that copy to Word button, and off it goes. Okay, let's do that again. So one of the things I can do is simply copy that to Word. So I simply press this button here, copy to Word, and it goes over, and I can paste it into Word as well. Okay. Well, on the subject of different categories, you can actually see that the categories are separated out here using different colors, and in this case I've got a range of different colors in the blue palette, and in fact that's determined by the style that I've chosen. And here you can see it's a style called Blues 12, which means it's generally blue, and there are 12 different individual categories which each have different colors. There's a whole range of different styles available within Mac Builder Pro. In fact, you can have up to 20 individual styles. So for example, I could choose this red, green, 3 pastel, so to see what that looks like, and Mac Builder Pro redraws that graph, and you can see in these quite nice pastel-y sort of colors. Other alternative styles might include, for example, here the rainbow style. That's got a much broader palette of colors, ranging from purple to quite bright orange. Not my particular style. How about this style 2 here? That is a different sort of palette altogether. Feels a bit like a sort of a 1950s muted palette. Now all of these styles are entirely editable, so I can choose this edit current style dialog, and what it will do is it will enable me to edit every single element of the style that I want, starting of course with the color, where I can choose a color palette, or I can choose colors from a defined custom color, and I can change those colors at will. So you can see, very easy to change individual colors, or I can alter the fonts, choose different font faces or different font colors, and Mac Builder Pro will enable me to save that as a full style set. So if I press that button, you'll see we go back in there, and that initial color on my list, the first one, it appears in bright yellow. So very flexible, very adaptable, and once I get the Mac graph to exactly the style that I want, obviously I've set my corporate colors up and I can reuse those at any time, but maybe there's a set of colors that I might want to use for a particular client as well, and I can simply save those all as a style set, which will save a huge amount of effort in the future. So one of the things I might want to do now is to copy that Mac chart to the clipboard, and then I can move over to a Word document, just a blank document there, and paste that Mac chart into that document, as you can see. So very easy to do, to copy and paste, or I can send that chart directly to Word as well by pressing my copy to Word button. So getting your Mac out of Mac Builder Pro is very easy. Other things that you can do, once you've designed your Mac and completed your Mac, you can actually save that Mac for future use, and so I can save it to a sheet. So it's offering me a save name called Saved One. I'll call it Niles Mac number 1. Okay, so just give it a name that I'll remember, and now what it will do is it'll go off and it will actually copy that to a new sheet for me called Niles Mac number 1. I've got a copy of the image, a snapshot, which I can reuse anytime that I want, just using the cut and copy and paste button, but I've also got all of the settings that I've used previously in my Mac saved for posterity. And in fact, this is the way that in the Mac Builder Pro I can actually use some of my example data. So here I've got a previous Mac that I'd saved in a variety of different styles of Mac that are available to me. Here's one with a list of projects and all of their technologies. So if I wanted to use that save data, I can simply just press that button. It's warning me that I'm going to overwrite my existing Mac, and if I want to go ahead and do that, I'm just going to say yes, and then I get taken back to my Mac chart. And as you can see, it's exactly as I'd saved it previously, with all of these projects, and in this case it's illustrating a Mac that's based on payback, so a variance from payback of 24 months. So effectively all of those projects which have a payback of less than 24 months are shown below the axis here, and those are the ones that maybe meet the approval threshold of my organization. Okay, I'm going to stop at this point. We spent about 20 minutes looking at Mac Builder Pro. There's a huge range of other things that you can do, such as display internal rates of return. You can modify the Macs and the statistics and the outputs even further. But I'll just leave you with this demonstration, and hopefully that's given you a taste of Mac Builder Pro, and it's a tool that you'll find useful in your work on energy efficiency or resource efficiency. Thank you very much.